Hello, I'm Sophie Ellis-Bextor and welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show.
Welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show.
Sophie Ellis-Bextor, welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show. How are you today?
I'm good, actually. How are you?
I'm really good. Very excited to talk to you. I've loved going through your entire career over the last couple of weeks and had a lot of fun doing it. First of all, though, you've recently been on a European tour. How was that?
Actually, really fun. Yeah, I just got back on Friday. It was my first European headline tour in about 20 years. So a bit overdue, but really, yeah, really good fun.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. I haven't done one in about 4 decades, which is outrageous. I will, though, some way to do this.
Yeah, well,
So,
I recommend waiting a while because then everybody's quite pleased to see you again.
yeah, I've just got to work out how to sing. I still haven't quite cracked that yet.
Oh, don't worry about that. That's not that important.
It's not. It's very true. I mean, my neighbours love it. They always sort of bang along on the wall every time I'm singing. I think they're enjoying it.
Exactly. There you go.
So I want to go all the way back to the beginning. Can you tell me when you were growing up, what did you aspire to be? Am I right in understanding you wanted to be an actress first? When did you first also fall in love with music?
Well, I mean, there were a few things I wanted to do, between sort of ages of like 4 and 14, I guess. Things like when first of all, ballerina or a nurse, and then I thought about acting or maybe aspects of journalism because I was quite liked English and writing. But music was sort of running alongside everything. Like I've always adored it and always been a really big fan of lots of stuff. And I remember absentmindedly thinking maybe about being a backing singer because I used to like harmonizing to things. And then when I was 16, I met someone who was looking for a singer for a band. And I thought, oh, that's probably a thing I should do, like a rite of passage kind of thing. And I just fell in love with it. And that's what changed everything, really. So yeah, from 16 is when it was singing, and I didn't really think of anything else after that.
Sure, because I thought at one point your first job was working part-time at hairdressers, but then I found out you actually started working long before that because you actually had a career selling drawings to your mum's friends.
Well, I was always trying to make a bit of cash. Obviously, when you're little, you're always trying to find ways to like up the pocket money. So yeah, I used to sell drawings. Just like I'd go in, if I was often the only kid when we would go out because my mum's friends didn't have any children. So I would quite often find myself at a table with lots of adults when I was about sort of 6, 7. So yeah, I would do little drawings and then send them around the table and see who would give me a pound. It works quite well, to be honest, because adults are quite easily guilt tripped by a child and they don't want to look bad in front of their friends. So yeah, and make a little bit of extra cash. And then the hairdressing thing was a Saturday job. That was just a way of earning some money. I was telling my 14-year-old yesterday that it's quite hard work, actually. I think unless you want to be a hairdresser, I'd recommend doing something else.
And so are you still doing the drawing as a side hustle today? Have your mum's friends got a million drawings on their fridge?
I would if I could. If I could have continued. I think my childlike approach to drawing only really was charming when I was a child. Now it just looks like a lack of talent.
Outrageous. Well, I would still buy them. I'm sure they're amazing. Now, now growing up, obviously you had a very creative parents. Your mum was in Blue Peter, your dad director and a producer. You saw showbiz and the media industry, I guess, as through how they experienced it and how it interacted with them. When you sort of grew up and got into it yourself, is your expectations of what it would be like? Is that how it was?
Well, I kind of feel like by going into music, I did kind of my own thing, really, because the music industry was so different to the TV world. So I think there were elements of it where it crossed over, but it was also enough of my own thing and enough of my own adventure, really. And I think, rock and roll is a lot more. I think the rules are even more skewed than TV. And TV, especially working at the BBC, which both my parents did. My mum for a longer time than my dad, but they both, had times doing that. It's quite a set structure of how you go through the ranks if you're in production side of things. Whereas with music, it's like, yeah, it's totally different world. So I think the thing that was quite handy, really, firstly, because my parents both worked in creative arts, it meant that they weren't freaked out that I wanted to do something that was also creative. But also I think it meant that it didn't, it always seemed like it was an option. Like for some people, I guess the idea of doing something that's not a proper job like that, you know, not structured, would be like, you know, a million miles away from their home life. But for me, it felt like, well, why not? You know, they've done things their own way. I'm going to do things my own way, really. But I quite liked the fact that it wasn't telly. I liked the fact that it was my own world. So there was enough.
You carved your own path, yeah.
Yeah, and they didn't understand everything. And I think sometimes as a kid, it's quite important to do something that your parents, where you can educate your parents a bit, whereas
yeah, they're not telling you you've got to do it this way or that way.
Exactly. So they were kind of learning it through my experience. Yeah.
Now, before we get into the music side of things, you once starred in a German police drama. Have you seen it since?
I haven't seen it even at the time. I wish I could remember what it was called. Yeah, that was, so basically when I was a teenager, I did get an acting agent for a very brief amount of time, and ended up doing a couple of things. And that one was a very strange job. It was only one day's work, but it was all in German, and I was speaking my lines in English in response to them asking me questions in German, but then I was going to be dubbed later. So it was sort of complicated and also very yeah, not destined to be a highlight, I think, but it was quite a wacky experience.
So you initially started off as the lead singer of an indie rock band, TheAudience, without a space. Was that an amazing introduction to the music industry? And I also wonder, what was it like just being in there in the 1990s? What was the culture of everything like?
Yeah, well, it was pretty amazing. It was kind of, I was, from the start of the band to the end of the band was 4 years. So from when I was 16 to when I was 20. Which is not very long. And through that time, I was like literally from me, half of that time I was at school as well. So it was kind of a very like fast track experience of getting, it's almost, I think of it as almost like getting my degree, because it was like learning all the elements. Like, this is what it feels like to play these little pubs. This is what it like when you first get a, you know, record deal offer. That's all exciting. And then all the hype and then the build up. And then the band kind of falling apart as well, all within the space of like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was incredible. And I kind of cite it as quite a formative time in lots of ways, because I think also it sort of consolidated my relationship with what it feels like on stage and how I like to write, because I still very much feel like part of a band. And I like that feeling when I'm on stage. I'm very used to, that's my experience of singing on stage, is always my band aren't just sort of, you know, hired people who stand behind me. We're very much in it together. And I think I have that because that's how I started. But also it was quite traumatic at the time, because by the time I was 20, I felt kind of high and dry. And I thought maybe I wasn't ever going to do anything successful again. And that was quite scary. And yeah, you're right. It was all through the late 90s. So I signed the deal in 97 when I was 18. And it wasn't the easiest time to be a woman in music, I think. And at the time, I thought maybe it was just me not being able to keep up. But now that a lot of my peers have spoken about that time, I see we were all feeling the same kind of way, really. And it wasn't a particularly easy time. You had to kind of, it was a bit sink or swim, really. But I'm very glad that I didn't have social media to accompany me through that journey, because I think it meant that I could kind of make a few mistakes and say some really stupid stuff. And it's kind of lost as part of my adolescence, really.
Yeah.
While I was a teenager. This is all before I hit 20. So yeah,
absolutely. I think it's great that most of the time when I was nightclubbing, social media didn't exist, and my dancing is not documented.
All of that stuff. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm glad it's lost. Good.
now speaking of those years when I was going to nightclubs every single night and, you know, going to university, had a part-time job, spending all my money on 2-for-1 VKs for some reason, one of the songs that was playing all the time was Groovejet. Now, initially, you almost didn't go for it, did you? Because it was a dance track and you didn't give it too much attention, but then you re-listened to it and then became a UK hit, an international hit as well. How much did that change your life?
Yeah. I mean, with with the music, it really was a bit of a curveball because nowadays I think we're quite used to the fact that people can cross-pollinate genres and
Yeah.
maybe be doing a clothing line while they're also releasing their first album. But in the 90s, it was a lot more kind of stay in your lane, really. And I was an indie kid. And also to illustrate that point, it wasn't just me that felt like that. When Groovejet came out, my manager at the time, who'd managed me while I was in my band, he said, I can't manage you because I don't really understand the dance world, wish you all the best. So I think it really was like jumping to a different island. But it was terribly exciting. And I think I also needed that. I think that was part of its appeal, was that it was something other. And I think I'd had such a lovely time in my band when it was going good, but when it started to go badly, it felt, humiliating and like a bit of a dead end. So the experience of doing a track like Groovejet, even if it hadn't been a success like it was, just the fact that it was something different and it took me into a different genre and introduced me to a whole different world of music was really significant. But then obviously the fact that the song did have a life of its own and was really incredible and it had such momentum. But I think also because I'd come off the back of a real failure, I could kind of keep my eyes open. I felt I was really excited and it was very heady, but I also still felt quite sober because I knew better than to kind of trust in it, if you know what I mean. It was like, so I just thought I'm just going to enjoy this and see where it leads me. And then when I got the opportunity to do a solo deal and make my first album, I was like, right, I'm not going to waste this. I'm going to work really hard on this and really enjoy myself because this is quite unusual to get another go. So yeah, it was pretty formative, really. And amazingly, I'm still singing Groovejet now. It's going to be 23 years old this year, and I still really like it, which is a nice feeling. I still have a very good relationship with
Must
that
be a
song.
huge relief.
Well, I think it is actually, because I've met singers that don't feel that way about songs they're known, and I always think that's quite sad. I don't think you can force it, but I'm on good relationship with all my songs, and I do think that's a nice thing.
Yeah, I've still got the same thing. I still like all of your songs too. So it's because they're good songs. I know, right?
Not a guarantee.
Well, we're still enjoying them at the minute, which is very good. And I'm sure I will very long into the future. One thing I didn't find out until very recently when researching this very interview was that Groovejet was the first ever song ever played on an iPod, which I think is very cool. Did you know about that at the time? Or is that something you found out years later on like a trivia website or something?
I don't know. I think I found out like probably a couple of years after iPods became a thing. Because obviously when they did that prototype iPod, that was a kind of experiment deep in the heart of Apple. So it's probably like a few years later that actually Cristiano Spiller, I think, told me about it. So it was probably a good while later, like 5 years, something like that. But yeah, that's a pretty cool idea, actually. Pretty bonkers as well.
So your debut album, Read My Lips, your first song from that was Take Me Home, which was, of course, a cover of the classic Cher song. Was that a song that you always loved? And was that always going to be the first song you released? And how important is it making that first statement for your first album?
Well, with the song, it's one that I'd only really been introduced to it when I was singing Groovejet in clubs around the country, because I had a tour manager who used to play it on it. He had a CD of songs from the Paradise Garage, like a Larry Levan mixtape. So it was all classic disco. And that was the song I always would look forward to coming up in the playlist, because I loved that one. And so I suggested it to Polydor when I was putting together my first album. I was like, what about a cover of this song? And one of the things that appealed to me, because I didn't want people to think that doing a cover was like a soft option, but actually Take Me Home had never been released in this country. So it wasn't like, oh, if I do that, it's guaranteed to have a certain result. I just thought it was a great song. And again, I still really love that. I love the original. It's so beautiful. Like if you have 7 minutes, listen to the original with all the strings. It's just incredible. But I think, I don't know, I suppose I didn't try and overthink too much about the first single. The thing about singles is I just always wanted to make sure that there were songs that I felt always represented the album well. And it's always quite hard because, especially when you're on a major label, which I was with Universal for a decade, you're every decision is made by committee. So you'll have your collection of songs, and then there'll be the ones that people say, I think these should be the singles. And then you think, oh, but is that really the best song? Is that really the one that's going to introduce people to the album? And with Take Me Home, I thought, yeah, I think that's quite a good place to start. I really, I think it's slinky, and I loved the sort of production that was done then as well, and it felt like it was enough removed from the original, but also played homage to the original. So yeah, I was happy, and I got to make a really lovely video as well.
Yeah, I loved it. And so next up, you released Murder on the Dance Floor, iconic, legendary song. And I'm sure you've spoken about it a billion times, but I want to speak about how you entered Fortnite's Boogie Down competition and came 14th and almost became a dancing icon yourself in the game and got 4,000 V-Bucks in the process. Have you spent them all yet?
Oh God, they were gone within about 2 seconds. Not by me, by my children. But yeah, so at the time, so Kit, who's now 14, so this would have been, when was that? You said 2014, did you? Okay, so he would have been like 7. And yeah, he was the one who was the really big Fortnite fan. So I thought, right, I'll do it for him. And recorded a little video of me doing a dance. And I think they probably felt a bit sorry for me, but also I think there weren't many like mid-30s women entering the Fortnite Boogie Down challenge. Most of them were teenage boys. Right. So that probably gave me a bit of an edge. Plus I wore a sequin playsuit. And yeah, imagine my delight. I came 14th, and then I also not only got the V-Bucks, but I also won all the disco emotes. So
did you? Oh, very
about
nice.
30 seconds in the house. I was very cool.
See, I still think we should keep campaigning for this. I think all of your songs should be in the game, right?
I would love that. That would be amazing. The kids are still, Fortnite's still a big thing in our house. So yeah, that would be very cool. But then with most of the things where I think the kids will be impressed, they'll be impressed for about 5 minutes and then on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's a great thing, isn't it? If you get them like the smallest gift or the biggest thing, that they're excited for a couple of seconds, and then they're on to the next thing they want.
Move on.
Outrageous. So in the music video Get Over You, you played a shop mannequin. How much fun was that to do? And can you tell me, because I've always wondered this, how did they do that glass breaking? Was that like CGI?
Yeah, so the glass breaking was a post-production thing, but actually to make me look like a mannequin, I did really have this horrific plasticky sort of gloop all over my face. Oh, that was grim. It would just be put up here and then just slowly fall down and drip down. It was like this very thick sort of glycerin-y type gloop.
Yeah,
my skin look all shiny. But yeah, I wanted to do that video because I'd been traveling through Europe promoting the album, and I had seen all these kind of creepy shops at night when I was driving one night, of all these mannequins in a shop window, and they were all like in wedding dresses, and I sort of thought, oh, imagine if one of them came to life. It was just a kind of silly idea, but it was really fun. I think that's one of the things I've loved about making videos, is you can kind of have a little kernel of something and then find yourself on set and it's all happening. But actually it was, as far as music videos go, that one was a little bit more stressful than usual because it was quite a lot to coordinate, and we only had one day.
Oh,
so
wow.
I remember we didn't finish till 4 or 5 in the morning, having started at like 7 or 8 the previous morning. So it was quite full on. But yeah, still pleased with the results, actually. It was, I've always loved making videos. I like making videos now. I think they're great.
I love your music videos. They're always a must watch. Like, I sometimes forget that people still make music videos, but every time you post a new one, I have to watch it, and they're always amazing.
Well, I can't really take any credit. I've done the majority of my music videos with one director, and she's amazing. She's called Sophie Muller, and it'd be worth, if you like my videos, it'd be worth you just looking up everything she's done, because she's the best.
Definitely, and I recommend everyone else does it as well. Now, I've always loved your timeless looks and your makeup and everything in your music videos. Have you got a favorite look that you've had over the years?
I think for me, I still think about the first album, because the people I worked with then. So on the very first day that I did my first solo video for Take Me Home, I met a makeup artist called Louise Constad and a hairdresser called Lisa Lauder, and I still work with them now. So I don't get to always have both of them with me, but Lisa, who also does makeup, has done every single video with me. So we've worked together now for over 20 years. And I think, I think I just fell on my feet really. So when I started with all of that, what I wanted to look like on stage, I was always very into makeup, but having those people with me was like having an amazing tutorial from the get-go. So Louise kind of taught me so much about makeup and what things could do, and it just made me quite bold really. So even now I still love putting on bright eyeshadows, and I treat the process of doing my makeup before a gig as kind of, that's the bit where I get into the right headspace. I think about where I am, how I want the show to go, things I might want to talk about on stage. So it's kind of quite a significant part of my day really if I'm touring. I think makeup is just such fun. It can really change your mood. I love the way it can change the way that you feel about yourself. It's like armor. And I think, I don't know, I never want to get stuck in a rut. I'm always happy to keep trying new things. So I guess even now, one of my favorite makeup era is still back to a combination of Take Me Home and Murder, really, because I kind of still do a lot of the same things, the black tick and the bright eyeshadows and a good bold lip, that kind of thing. Yeah, I like it.
I love it. Have you got a favorite eyeshadow brand that you recommend?
Actually, I've got quite a lot of different things. I mean, I think you can get your kind of professional stuff like MAC, or I've still got a good Shimura collection, but then I like Huda Beauty as well, and Urban Decay. And then, I love just getting stuff from Boots and Superdrug or anywhere I find myself, or if I'm at an airport, I'll go and have a little gander. And some of my favorite things are things that are quite inexpensive, but they're just really good colors.
Yeah.
And then I think you can kind of build things up. There isn't like a secret ingredient. I think it's about experimenting and seeing what makes your heart happy when you put it on your face.
Absolutely. And so in 2013, you reached the final of Strictly Come Dancing. Can you tell me what your favorite performance during that time was?
Oh, my favorite. I mean, I think probably doing the Charleston was a bit of a special one, because I felt like the first dance I did was a waltz, and then the second was the Charleston. And then the Charleston, I just really enjoyed it. It had I loved the attitude of the dance. And what was quite fun as well is that the guy that I was paired with, Brendan, he'd never done one before. So for both of us, we were kind of learning something and looking at lots of old footage and saying, oh, look at that lift and look at that kick, and trying to build a dance. And I think his choreography was excellent. So, and I was also very nervous on the night, but then it all kind of came together. And I think I'm glad I got to have an experience of feeling good like that, because some weeks I just felt really nervous and not as good. But overall it was a really fun thing to do. And I think it kind of helped me really, because it taught me a lot about performing, and also about overcoming nerves, and about learning stuff when you're stressed. It was like a good education in lots of different things.
Yeah, I bet it was. And you were amazing at all the flips and the lifts and everything that you did. Were you apprehensive to do stuff like that? Or were you like, can we add another lift in there? Can you flip me over there?
Yeah, I was quite up for it, to be honest. I'm a bit of a thrill seeker anyway. And I think also, I just sort of thought, why not? Like, if you're going to be doing it, I trusted Brendan as well. I think it's really important you trust whoever it is that's, swinging you above their head. But I think, the lifts and everything, that was they're quite exciting, and I think that adrenaline rush is quite addictive. So whenever you don't get to do lifts and flips and stuff in every dance, but whenever we could, I'd be like, yes. And also, as you're doing it, you're getting fitter. So by the end, I mean, we didn't put it in our routine, but I could even do that one, the lift from Dirty Dancing, which I don't think I could do it anymore, but you're going to get in such, you're building all your muscles and your core and all that. So by the end, you feel a bit more bulletproof, actually. Yeah, that stuff's really fun. And look, it hasn't happened again since. So I'm glad I took the opportunity while I had it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
No one's flipping me around these days like above their head and spinning me.
Outrageous. So I loved all of your performances, Sweet Dreams and I Want to Dance for Somebody. Everything was just like, wow, every single time you did it.
Thank you. I haven't watched any of those things for a long time.
You should, they're really good. You're in them.
You know what? It was really fun. I mean, it's such a unique thing. And the beauty of Strictly is you only get to do it once. So you might
Yeah,
as well go for it.
very true. Speaking of which, you competed in season 2 of The Masked Singer as an alien, but can you tell me, did you get to keep the costume?
No, and that's fine. I literally don't know what I would do with that. Like, where would I keep it? It's huge. The head is like this sort of, it's probably like a meter high. It's and all the hair. But I do think that show is really good fun. And I tell you what, all the crew behind the scenes are really lovely. It's like got a very, I think because it's not really a competition, it's kind of a fun show that everybody's quite upbeat and chipper, and it's like it feels quite relaxed. It's quite weird though, because when you're doing it, you really do have this mirrored face thing and gloves and a snood and all sorts. So there's only about 4 or 5 people that you speak to who actually get to see you, where you can like take your face off sort of thing and show yourself. Everyone else, even people who are working on the show, they don't see you. And whenever you're walking around, it's like, it's quite surreal. It's like you're kind of coming out of an operation or something. Because everybody's kind of, you have to kind of hold on to people when you're walking around in your outfit because you can't really see.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll see another person, or another creature walking towards you, and it's quite trippy.
Are the masks specially made so that they can conduct sound well?
Yes, so they've got microphones inside, which actually work a lot better than you would think. But the other thing that's odd is that you've got like in-ear monitors, so you've got like little headphones in so that you can hear yourself. But because you've got that and only that and the microphone, it means you can hear your own breathing. So when you get nervous, you can really hear you're like inside this mask. Because usually if I'm wearing my monitors for a gig, before and after the show, I've got one ear out so I can hear people, I can hear the room. But in that, as soon as you've got that mask on, you're just sort of in your own, it's like being in a helmet. It's quite odd. But I did enjoy it. I'm glad I did it. It was kind of silly fun.
Absolutely. I was delighted to see you on the show. And so in 2019, you released the Song Diaries featuring orchestral versions of all of your classic hits. First of all, that album gave me absolute goosebumps in a way that I was not expecting. It was amazing.
Thank you. Well, it's really fun to do, actually. It was nice to kind of totally reinterpret my music in a way, because I'd got to a point where people were asking me about doing greatest hits, and I was like, what about something else? And actually it meant that I got to then tour it, and I toured it with an orchestra, and that was a real privilege. And it's lovely as a singer to have the space to do something different, because singing with a band is quite a different discipline. With an orchestra, you can really pull back, and the dynamics are a lot more nuanced, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was amazing. And can you tell me, having gone through all these songs again anew, what are your favorite songs now to perform on stage from your entire career?
Well, I think it's always fun having new things to play with. So the new album, I've been doing the new single, which is called Breaking the Circle live, and that's been really fun because it's quite big and it sounds quite epic and dramatic. But also my band that I tour with, a lot of them played on the new album as well. So we've got quite a live element in there, and I can't wait to play those ones live. But then I also like doing the ones that are quite dramatic and bombastic. I've got a song called Heartbreak Make Me a Dancer, which I love doing live because it's really solid and it can take a lot. So when we were touring with the orchestra, the first half of the gig was orchestral, and then the band would come out. And then when I do songs like Heartbreak, but with on top of it harp and timpani and strings, it just sounded like ginormous, like this wall of sound. So I love doing things like that. But then it's also quite nice to have tender moments. I've got a song called Young Blood, and that always brings everything right back and makes me feel very in the moment. And that's really lovely. I didn't used to have a song like that in the roster, so it's nice to kind of have the opportunity to just have a quieter moment, because there's a lot of songs that are noisy. So I've got my cat here. Let's see, this is Titus.
Hi Titus, welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show.
Yeah, he's having a little sit down. He's not interested in me unless I need to do something.
I've got 2 Yorkshire Terriers, and they sometimes sit on me, and then I'm like, I should go over there and do stuff, but they're asleep and I don't want to wake them. So I'm just trapped here for an entire day.
And it's quite nice, actually, isn't it? Being trapped underneath a little snoozy animal.
Yeah, it's quite good. It's a good excuse not to do anything as well.
Exactly.
So can you tell me about some of your favorite ever live performances and perhaps locations and why they were particularly special to you?
Well, I think my favorite gig was probably a gig that I did when I just done that orchestral record, and we were figuring out how we were going to tour it. And, how do you tour with an orchestra and a band? And it was all looking a bit impossible. And then I met a guy called Ollie Rosenblatt. Well, I say I met him. I'd worked with him before on something else, but he basically tours with orchestras. And he said, I know how to do this. And he basically booked a gig at the Royal Festival Hall. And it was a one-off show at the time. And he brought the 40-piece orchestra and I brought my band. And we didn't have any rehearsals. We just had the score. So on the day, we had kind of a long sound check, listen to the way, get the levels right. But really, it meant that when we came to the gig, a lot of it was very, very fresh. We hadn't really done it. But I mean, orchestras are like athletes, so they can have a score in front of them and just play it. But it meant that there was this real exhilaration of something very new, very different. And I also happened to be 6 months pregnant with my fifth baby, so with Mickey. And I just felt like this is a treat in all directions. And I felt very happy in my skin. So that gig was very special to me. And then I think touring now is just a delight. I love doing that. It always makes my heart happy. And I think the fact that, when I do a show, and I missed this so much in lockdown, so it kind of brought home to me how much the live shows are, matter to me really. But it's just that everything is very much about that moment, and you're allowed to really clear your head and just be there doing those songs, reacting to the crowd, trying to cultivate a show that means people feel happy because they've made a decision to come out and find me. And it's not lost on me that it's quite a big deal for people to buy a ticket to something. So I'm like, right, I want to make sure they go home feeling really satisfied. So I love that. And actually, only last month I had quite an exciting one. I did something called the Piano Rooms for Radio 2, and I loved doing that.
Sorry,
and I think
amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, well, you know what? I loved it because we were just, for me and all the band, it's a big treat. You're in Maida Vale, you've got the BBC Concert Orchestra, but also I quite like, it's nerve-wracking, but I quite like the exhilaration of everything leading up to one moment. The red light goes on to show we're recording, you get introduced, and then it's like, okay, do your song. And it's just very, very exciting to feel so focused and so in it. And of course, being nervous or adrenalized can be quite, overwhelming. But I've come, actually, since Strictly, I've come to kind of also see it as a bit of a privilege to feel so, I don't know, focused about one moment like that. I think if that's part of your job, you've got to find a way to find that really exciting. Otherwise, you'll just find a lot of it really horrible and traumatic. So yeah, I've come to really enjoy those moments and see it as so exciting that I'm still having things like that at this point in my career.
Yeah.
It's never got boring,
Yeah, and I think your passion for music really just shines through in every performance that you do. You're just a joy to watch and listen to.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I do feel very lucky, I'm nearly 44 now. I'm going to be 44 next month. And I know how lucky I am to still do something I really love. So it's important to me to have that passion for it, really.
I really loved your book, Spinning Plates, and I listened to the audiobook version, and I listened to the entire thing in one day. I couldn't stop listening to it. It was amazing. And you're honest and unapologetic and inspiring, and it's fun and sad and everything. And I really highly recommend that everyone listens to it.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Sarah. Well, thank you for spending a day with my voice going around your head.
It's a lot easier than not listening to it and just guessing what's in it, I find.
That's true. That's a fun game to play, but yeah.
It's one thing I love about my shows. I get through so many books on purpose because I pick my guests.
Well, yeah, and I have a podcast where I interview people, and then sometimes I'm quite relieved when they haven't written a book. Like, okay,
I know, right?
Off the hook. Otherwise, if they've written a book, I'm like, oh no, I've got to read. Or sometimes they've written like a few. Like, oh no.
Yeah, if
Gotta get
someone's
through all
written
that.
like 20, that's like a couple of months of
Exactly.
my life.
Oh no. Yeah, I've got to cherry pick something.
I know, right? There's one thing I really love that you said in your book that really resonated with me, and it was rather have a positive image in your head than not dismantle it later with your eyes. I know that, like, you're feeling like amazing one day, and then you catch a glimpse of yourself in a reflection. You're just like, oh, what the hell, mirror? Why are you doing that to me? Which is why my favorite lighting is in the cinema, I think.
Well, yeah, I think sometimes just leave things as a memory. And I think, I mean, I don't really watch a lot of stuff back that I do either. I think I know how I felt when things, when I've done something. Like, did that feel good? Yeah. And then I don't really want to revisit it and find out, actually, no, I didn't do that the way I thought, or, oh, well, that was different. So, yeah. And I think when you go out for the night, that bit where you're kind of having a great time and then you go to order a drink at the bar and you catch sight of yourself across the bar and you're like, oh no. And then from then on, you feel totally different, don't you?
Yeah.
Like inflated, like a little balloon going down. So I think, yeah, just keep it here as much as possible.
I think so. 'Cause you look like when you got ready and you went out, but then you don't check for several
Yeah.
hours, and then it's better
Yes.
just not to, I think.
Agreed. Yeah, just maintain that.
Yeah. Get home 3 a.m., you still look amazing, just don't look, and then
Exactly.
it's fine. I also really wanted to thank you for the kitchen disco videos that you did during lockdown. They were such a joy. And can you tell me about your inspiration for doing that? Because people were putting out little 3-minute videos or whatever, but you were bringing a show into everybody's homes from your house with your family running around, and it was amazing.
Yes. Very live as well.
Mm.
uh, it was such a crazy time. I mean, it's funny. It's really hard for me to articulate it even now, only because I think it was such an extreme thing to have no one here, to not really be seeing anyone, to not even be able to go around and visit my mum, who lives like 10 minutes away from me, but at the same time to be welcoming lots of people virtually here and feeling this community grow. But it was all abstract. I mean, I really felt like I needed that. Like for Richard and I, the discos are kind of what we would focus on, because obviously, like lots of people, the majority of our time in lockdown was very far away from that kind of mood. It was, stressful and scary and so many question marks and heavy conversations and being completely transfixed by the news every day and trying to work out what's happening whilst also trying to set a tone for the kids that wasn't going to have us all spiral. So that was all, I found that all quite intense and didn't have a lot of headspace. But the discos just gave Richard and I a thing to focus on that made us feel good. And not just us, the kids as well. I think having, it's only half an hour on a Friday night,
Yeah.
but it was just something a bit other. And otherwise, everything was so repetitive. And, and just on a really like personal note, it was nice to have something like the disco where I knew that my dad was watching. I knew that my friends were watching. I'd get messages from the same friends after every disco. And, it made me feel connected to people. But then as the community grew, I felt connected to all those other people as well. And I felt like a real purity of exchange, really.
Yeah.
We were missing everyone and everything. But this was a place where everybody could just get together and people would send me pictures from their home and they'd be wearing sparkly tops, or I would just be on a phone propped up while they're getting their supper ready, or sometimes people would all log in together with their friends. It was all different interpretations, but all of them, I loved it. I loved if people were taking it big. I loved it if people were just like having it on in the background while they were doing something else. It just made me feel connected, and that was really important. And that's kind of set a bit of a tone since then about the shows as well, because that's all been a kitchen disco tour. So we've been sort of trying to recreate the best elements of the discos in a way that we could also work with a room full of people in real life. And just, and I did my last gig last week on Wednesday, and I'm looking out a load of people in Poland, and I'm like, who came to the disco? And a few people put their hands up like that. That's mind blowing anyway. But also just the fact that we're all there doing it. I mean, I know it's boring to talk about the pandemic because everybody's a bit like over it, but there was so long when none of those things could happen, and we didn't know when it was coming back. So still looking out at a sea full of people, and we're all there together, is really lovely. And I remember missing that a lot. So I like the fact that it's happening again.
Yeah, it was such a special thing. And you went on to raise £1 million for children in need, doing a 24-hour disco dance-a-thon as well. So you should be mega proud of that.
You know what? I actually really enjoyed that. I don't know if I was supposed to, but the last bit was really a bit like scraping the barrel in terms of just getting over the line. But I'd say 21 hours of it, I was pretty up there. I remember I started at 9:30, I think it was, in the morning, and I got all the way through to about 5 in the morning, and then I was like, okay, if this was a night out, this is when I'd go home.
Yeah.
And then you just got the last sort of 4 hours or so to finish, but it was still really amazing. Also, you've got so much goodwill around you. I'm like one person surrounded by so much. I mean, all the stuff that's gone into creating that 24 hours. So all the music choices and all the people that were there and all the people that were coming in on Zoom and chatting to me for 10-15 minutes. It was quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it really was a special thing. And Pudsey the bear joined in and danced too.
Yeah, every time Pudsey would come out, we'd have a little boogie, and Pudsey could keep the rhythm. It was all good. I think the only bit that was tricky was I was having a bit of a dip at about 6:30, 7 in the morning, and then whoever was doing the music playlist thought it'd be really funny to play back to back Scatman, Cotton Eye Joe, and Who Let the Dogs Out. And I was like, you are trying to break me now. Like, this is just cruelty. But once I got the other side of that, I was all right.
They're all really high energy songs, and you just want to put everything into every one of those, right?
Energy and also rubbish. Like, a good song was just lifting me, and those songs were like kryptonite. I was like I struggle to dance to that at the best of times, let alone when you've been dancing for 20 hours.
Yeah, Cotton Eye Joe's a difficult one to dance to.
Oh God, it's like being beaten around the head by something.
Now, I really loved your live album at the Palladium. It's perfection. Can you tell me how you went about picking all the songs that you performed there?
So for the tour, we kind of been doing what I'd call like a party set, I suppose. So it's a fair amount of my songs, a few party classic covers, but also I've got a wheel that has songs on it. So some of mine and some cover versions. So everything in the whole set is a song that I would have performed during the kitchen discos from home. So all of my songs, all of the covers, they all had a moment. But obviously, if we'd done every song, then the set would be about 40 songs long, and then it would be like my own dance-a-thon again. So we would spin the wheel, and it would just bring something at random. And every once in a while, I would cheat and just click it on. But actually, on the Palladium night, we did get some good ones. We got, I think, Dancing Queen, and maybe Bittersweet. And then when I did the live album, so we had the whole gig from the Palladium, but then we also put in a few of the other covers as well and other singles so that people could kind of get the majority of everything. And just really good fun. And also my poor band. It's like, right, we've got to learn, I think it was 44 songs in total for the gigs, but not all of them might come up. But in the end, I think pretty much everything did, actually.
That's amazing. I was listening through to it, and it's kind of fun because I've got tickets to see Lionel Richie and Madonna this year. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, great. I mean, that'll be amazing. I've
not at the same time, different shows, obviously, they're not.
And then you sing Madonna at the O2?
Yeah.
Cool.
But all the tickets had sold out, but she released more tickets, and I somehow got some.
Amazing. I can't wait to see what that show's going to be like.
It's just one of those sort of bucket list people that,
Have you never seen her before?
No.
No, she's good. I've seen her live a few times. And she's got this really clever ability to, you want to be a good crowd member for her. You're trying to look for her approval, which I think is a brilliant trait to have in a front person. Annoyingly, she has put one of her O2 dates on the same night as one of my gigs, but that's okay. Well, hopefully you can compare and contrast.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to your tour as well.
Nice.
I love your cookbook.
Thank
So
you.
you and Richard wrote this, and I love it. And it's inspired by stuff you cook at home, but also your favorite recipes from around the world. And you've included cocktails and playlists as well. It's so much fun. I love this book and highly recommend it.
Thank you. You know what? I was really happy to do a cookbook. It was just a dream come true. And we started writing down, the sort of cookbook we wanted to do actually ages ago, back in 2017, and nothing really came of it. So I think when Octopus approached us about doing a cookbook, I think they were quite shocked at how enthusiastic we were and how many things we'd already kind of got in our heads, because we're such, everything revolves around the kitchen and also what we're going to eat and when. And I'm not a bad cook, and Richard's a really good one. So we're always thinking about the next meal. It's fun.
Have you got a favorite recipe from the book, or one that you wish you'd added that you thought of after?
I don't know ones I wish I'd added, because I think at the moment it's still quite a good representation of there's always new things, but I think in general it's quite a solid representation of where our hearts go when we're thinking about what to eat. But favorites, I mean, I love the whole chapter that's kind of the Mexican inspired, because that sort of tends to be what we have if we're celebrating, and also we all like it, all the kids. It's across the board,
Yeah.
a crowd pleaser, and it always looks so pretty. But then I think when it's just Richard and I eating, then he does a very good spaghetti vongole, and I think that one is always something I associate as being quite decadent, although actually it's relatively easy to cook. You can have the whole thing done within about 10 minutes. You can cook the whole thing from start to finish. 10-15 minutes and you're done. So that's quite
Perfect.
satisfying.
One of the recipes made me laugh. It was, you should be in bed toast.
Yes, well, that's when the kids are not being very good about going to bed, and then they'll say, I'm hungry. So that was especially for them, it's what I'll make them when it's like, you should actually be going to bed now, but I'll make you one more thing to eat.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Sweet.
So your album Wanderlust was inspired by Eastern Europe and Familia by Latin America. Can you tell me where your 7th album, Hana, will be taking us?
Yeah, so this is the 3rd record that I've done with an amazing musician called Ed Harcourt, who we've done Wanderlust, Familia, and now we've done this album Hana. And we quite like having a place in our heads to go, like a landscape. So this one is Japan, because I've always been obsessed with Japan, and I hadn't been when we started writing, and then I went. So the album is kind of about the idea of that trip and the mood of the trip that I went on. It was quite a special trip. It was in 2020, and it was just me and my mum and my eldest son. So 3 generations. And it was just, really special in lots of ways. It was special anyway, but then we came back, and then the world tilted, and nobody went anywhere for a while. So it kind of it's a little bit like frozen in time, a sort of precursor to everything, really. And I just found it a very rich source of inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. It's somewhere I've always wanted to go. And the album is out on the 2nd of June. I've pre-ordered it already. Very excited about it. And
thank you.
Head over to our website and pre-order it right now.
Oh, thanks. Well, you know what? It's always amazing bringing out a new record. And this one has taken a little bit longer than the others to cook, just because of the nature of getting together with Ed, and obviously the 2 years when we couldn't really travel around as much or go and see each other and write. So I'm extra keen to get this one out in the world now. Yeah, I'm happy.
I love your debut single, Breaking the Circle, and I think it's one of my favorite songs of yours, actually. Can you tell me what you might be releasing next? Have you got that lined up already?
Yeah, so the next song is one called Lost in the Sunshine, which is kind of quite a hazy, summery, there's sort of lazy, hazy summer days where you haven't really got to be anywhere, and you're just kind of basking a bit, really. I suppose it's like a date song, but it's very kind of subdued. I always see it all as like being through like a sort of sepia filter. It's kind of lovely days like that where it's all warm and hazy. And so that's the 2nd single. And then I think the 3rd one will be something called Until the Wheels Fall Off. But hopefully when Lost in the Sunshine comes out, it'll be actually spring and some like early summer. So you get that like those nice hot days where you're like feeling all optimistic.
So it's almost summer.
Yeah, kind of a,
Love
you know,
that.
that thing where you get those nice spring days and you're like, oh, finally. I thought these days would never come again, and they do.
Mm. And the days are a bit longer and we've got some actual sunshine. On the 30th of June, you're doing a one-off show at Lafayette in London. Can you tell me, will you be, it's to celebrate the album's release, will you be playing through the album on that night?
Yes, I'm going to do the album, and then I think I'm also going to do some kind of, I might do some kind of quirky songs as well, like maybe some songs I don't always do live, because the show is sold out, and which is great, and I think it probably will be a lot of you know, quite quite lovely fans who did that for me. So I think I should make it kind of a bit of a quirky gig and do some stuff that I don't normally do, which I think should go down quite well.
Sounds amazing. And here's a question that I ask every guest on the Sarah O'Connell show. Can you tell me a fun fact about you, a hobby, a party trick, something like that?
Mm, well, my party trick is something I learned from Twin Peaks, uh, a TV program that I used to watch in the 90s, which I adored. Because there's a scene where one of the girls can tie a cherry stalk in knots with her tongue, so I can do that. It does mean you need to have cherries for the party trick to happen, but you know, that's what I could do. And then other hobbies. Well, I kind of like just like doing stuff, and I'm quite into doing stuff in the house. I'm quite crafty. I wouldn't say I've got particularly like huge amount of talent in any direction, but I am enthusiastic. So I'm always decorating, painting, rejigging, kind of reimagining the house. It's like a constant work in progress, but I really, really love it. So when I'm not traveling and if I've got time at home, I get really excited about having time to kind of redo bits of the home again. It's just a constant flux, but it's really addictive.
I love that. I'm especially impressed with the cherry thing. I've never been able to work out how to do that.
Well, I would say I think it's one of those things that more people could do if they had a go.
Mm.
I don't think it's as hard as you might think. You just got to visualize it. That's my tip.
I think the main thing preventing me from learning is that we often have glacier cherries in the kitchen for desserts and things, and they don't tend to come with the extra bit.
No, no, you definitely need a stalk. You can't tie a cherry. Don't try with a cherry. That won't
I think
work.
that's where I'm going wrong.
Yeah, that might be. Go back to the drawing board, but with the stalk this time.
It's almost impossible, I tell you.
Yes, exactly.
I've got lots of notes about this now. Okay, get actual cherries with stalks. Interesting.
There you go. There you go.
So you are a trans ally, and the 31st of March is Trans Day of Visibility. Have you got any messages for the community and why it's important to be an ally?
Oh my goodness, I don't think it's ever has been as important as now. I think what's happening to trans people and oh, the speech around it is really terrifying.
Mm.
I'd ask people, well, what my message to them, just stay strong. I hope everybody, every trans person's got a good support network around them. I think sometimes what happens is people can intellectualize arguments that are emotional, but they don't always remember that at the heart of every story we're talking about are real people and very vulnerable people. So yeah, I'd say just stay strong in your group and keep your loved ones close. I just think it must be a really terrifying time. Like if that was, if one of my kids was trans and experiencing, seeing what they see, the rhetoric that's around, I would be scared for them. I don't really get it. I don't understand why things have gone backwards. But I think there's still amazing, amazing people out there keeping a very cool head about it all and speaking very clearly and with real, nuance and trying to explain why what's going on is not okay. But stay strong, my darlings.
It's very good advice. Thank you. And so you were featured in Portrait Artist of the Year, but can you tell me if you could paint anyone in the world, who would it be?
Um, Golly, I'd settle for just like anyone because I just would love the ability to paint. I would just like to be able to draw properly. Oh, that'd be amazing. So yeah, and anyone at all. If it looks like them when I'm done, I'm happy.
I love
I should
that.
probably just, I think it'd have to be someone like more. Someone really sick.
But
Bart Simpson.
I interviewed Peter Lord once, who's the co-creator of Aardman Animation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I studied animation at university.
It's all about the animation.
Yeah, it is a bit. So yeah, I studied 2D animation, but I always loved media and film and comedy and all that kind of stuff. And eventually launched my own show just to celebrate the people and the things and the stuff I love, and to shine a spotlight on amazing creative people around the world, upcoming stars as well, and that kind of stuff.
Fun. It's a good thing to do. Passion project, isn't it?
Very much is.
Yeah.
Speaking of passion projects, you appeared in a legendary series, Neighbours. How exciting was that? And were you growing up a Neighbours or a Home and Away person, or did you used to watch one then switch over to the other?
I was only Neighbours, always only Neighbours. I never really watched Home and Away. And that's why I said yes when they asked me about doing a little cameo, because I thought that's a really brilliant thing to have on my CV. Sometimes I do things because I feel like younger me would be really like chuffed with that. It's such a quirky thing to do. But everybody was really sweet, and it was actually really good fun. And luckily for me, it was all in London, so I didn't have to I didn't have to travel far for my 5 minute role.
It's so convenient that they brought Ramsay Street to you.
I know. Brilliant. Yeah, on the banks of the River Thames next to the London Eye. Yeah, it was really good fun actually. That's another thing I haven't watched back. I should try and find the clip.
Yeah, because at one point Neighbours was cancelled, but now they've brought it back, and I think they're filming new episodes, and I think it's all going to be available to stream or something somewhere.
Yeah, it's quite sweet that, isn't it? Because there must be people out there who have just kept on with it, right? Through thick and thin. They'd count someone like me as very fair weather, I'm sure, but I only watched it really when I was cool.
Just before it ended, I got back into it for a couple of months. I was accidentally watching an episode one day at lunchtime, and then I just got into that storyline. Now I'd seriously linked it for a couple of months and only stopped because my Skybox got full up, and it just stopped recording it and back out of the loop.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. If I started that again, I mean, wow. I don't think I think I've given over that part of my brain to this series of Love Island.
I'm all about Below Deck at the moment.
Yeah, I haven't watched that. I've heard it's good fun. Yeah, there's so much out there, isn't there?
There is. It's not possible to watch everything.
No, it's not. I know.
So you've done loads of interesting things. You auditioned as a Bond girl for Die Another Day. You were an extra in Game of Thrones. Is there any other franchises that you'd love to be a part of?
No, I mean, that's not really how my mind works anyway. I kind of just, things pop up, you know? So with Game of Thrones, that was something where we knew it was finishing, and we'd heard that people had done like gone over and been extras. So I basically sent an imploring email saying, please, can we do that? And that was really good fun. But there's not, I kind of go where my brain takes me, and then if there's something, then I'll be like, okay, I'm going to turn all my attention into trying to make that happen. So at the moment, I'm not looking outside of what I'm up to, but maybe there'll be something where I'll go, oh my gosh, now it's that. It's just really fun, and I like the fact that I feel like it's a real privilege to be able to pepper your life with like these kind of weird and wonderful experiences. They're good fun.
Can you tell me your musical inspirations and who are you loving and listening to at the moment?
Well, my inspiration's kind of all over the shop, really. And there's still a lot of people that I loved when I was young that I still think are brilliant. I went to see Belinda Carlisle in concert the other day, and it was fantastic. And I grew up on her and Nana Cherry and Madonna and Prince and Bowie and all sorts of pop music. And then I was a really big indie kid. That whole time, that Britpop scene was really a big deal for me. My whole bedroom wall was like absolutely plastered in posters. And then I didn't really get into like dance and disco till after that, really, with Groovejet. So that's something that I still listen to. And then now I kind of still revisit stuff. I don't know if everybody else has found this, but during the pandemic time, I was kind of on such a nostalgia trip of going back and listening to albums and revisiting stuff I had listened to for a really long time. And now, trying to think what's inspired me. I mean, I like things like sort of French approach to synth and dance and pop. So bands like Phoenix and Charlotte Gainsbourg and what else have we been listening to? We listened to War on Drugs, I love Vampire Weekend. I don't think what else we've been putting on recently. We were listening to Miley Cyrus yesterday, actually. Um, yeah, just sort of trying to keep my ear to the ground, really, and also stuff that gets put in front of me. And when I was away on tour, my band were all playing different things. Everybody was sort of fighting to have control, and we were doing actually quite a lot of nostalgia with that as well. Actually, quite a lot of things like Steely Dan and Fleetwood Mac. Um, Sometimes you can't beat just kind of going back and listening to things again that you liked when you were small, and just going like, oh yeah, there's a whole world in this song.
I love to say, like, when I was a kid and a teenager and stuff, I would obviously get and listen to albums, but there's whole back catalogues of people, because we couldn't stream every song that came out or anything like that, so you had to be really selective what you had. But I love even now going back and listening to people's early stuff, if it's Cyndi Lauper or whoever, and like there's still a whole world of 70s or 80s music that I've still yet to discover.
Yeah. It's exciting. There's tons out there, and I like the fact that now with Spotify and stuff, you can hear a song in the morning and think, oh, I quite like the sound of that, and then by the end of the day, you've gone through loads of stuff. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really special thing. So I mentioned it briefly earlier. Can you tell me about your Christmas kitchen disco tour that's coming up in November and December? What can we expect?
So I think what we're going to do is do a kind of party set again, but I think depending on the date, we might have to bring more Christmas in, because I think you can handle a couple of Christmas songs in November, but you kind of want more when it's December. So I think we'll kind of have to sort of take our lead a little bit. I might have a wheel of songs that are just Christmas songs. But really, I kind of wanted it to be a kind of a party season, just get everybody together at that time of year where you're all kind of thinking about your family and your friends, and you just want to go out for a big night out and have some fun with the band. And I think we can create something really special, actually. Just have a proper disco that's got all of those elements. And obviously, I'll have all my songs too, and I can maybe sprinkle some of the new ones in, and yeah, just try and create something really fun.
So can you tell me what you're working on next? Is it all about your current album? Have you started thinking about what could be the next one yet? What themes you might explore, or are you still focused on the upcoming release?
So I think at the moment, I'm just looking forward to getting the new album out and supporting that in any way I can. Got a lovely summer of lots of festivals as well. And then the next album will be a bit of something different for me, because I'm not going to work with Ed for the next record. We were only ever going to do 3. I might work with him again one day, but I think we just thought we'd do 1, 2, 3. And so this is our third. And then I might explore a different way of working for the next one. So it kind of leaves things a little bit open. I've got some ideas, but I might have to feel my way a little bit first.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
It is exciting, and it's quite good to kind of set some rules. I've realised I work better when I've got a framework of sort of do's and don'ts, and I think I find that quite good for inspiration. So yeah, I think sometimes when you're kind of given some boundaries, it actually makes you work harder within it. So the fact that it won't be with Ed already kind of gives me an idea in my head of what it has to be next. I quite often work in a bit of a pinball way anyway. I go from one side to the other side all the time.
Sure.
So yeah, I've got some ideas.
Can you tell me about your writing process? Do you think, right, today I'm getting up, I'm going to write all day, or do you wait for inspiration to hit you? Do you carry a notepad around, or just go out and live your life and see what comes to you?
No, I kind of need to set time in, really. So, I mean, I'm always open to stuff, and I'll write down ideas or sing a little new one to my phone. But really, I think I need the days where I set aside time, and that's all that I'm doing. And I go to the studio, and occasionally I write something on my own or write an idea or something on the piano. But I work best when I've got someone else there, because I think I need that discipline and that deadline and that focus. So yeah, I'll have a day in the studio, start at I don't need hours. Start at 12, finish by 6, and you've got 6 hours to just create something. And sometimes you can write a whole song that way, or sometimes you'll start something, sleep on it, come back to it the next day and finish it. But it's a bit like a muscle. It's like, I find like for me, it's a bit like saying you're going to exercise, but then not going to the gym. I need to go to a place that's designated for that role, because then I will not be distracted and not sort of go, oh, I'm just going to finish such and such and then I'll get on with it. I work better that way.
Final question. Have you got any messages for people watching the Sarah O'Connell Show and your fans around the world?
Well, I'd like to thank you for asking me some lovely questions today, and I hope everybody's doing all right. And yeah, if they've listened to us, then that's lovely. I think I've got any other messages. I hope everybody's into my new record, like every musician ever said. But I think I'm just feeling a little bit like, you know, when you're like going to give a present to someone and you're like excited to see the reaction. I feel like that. Like I've spent ages making this, so I just want to like rip the packaging off now and just be like, ta-da, here it is.
I'm very excited to listen to it. Sophie Ellis-Bextor, thank you so much for your time today. I've had a lot of fun chatting to you.
You too, Sarah. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And everyone should buy your book and your cookbook and pre-order your new album and see you on tour, listen to your podcast and everything else that you do. You're amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, submerge yourself in my world.
I have for a couple of weeks, so I highly recommend it. I've been listening to you since you first came out, obviously, but yeah.
Recently, you've gone deep.
So yeah, thank you again so much for coming on my show. You're welcome back anytime.
Oh, thank you. It'll be a pleasure.
You're very welcome. And thank you to everybody watching at home. Be sure to share, subscribe, give this video a big thumbs up and leave lots of lovely comments. I'll see you all again soon for another episode of the Sarah O'Connell Show. Bye.
Bye.